In the Gospel, Jesus offers a deep and welcoming invitation to those who are burdened. He says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Matthew 11 verses 28 to 29. This promise of comfort is one of Jesus' most touching messages. By stating that his burden is light, he does not mean that life will be without difficulties, but that the way of facing these difficulties can be transformed through his presence and teachings. Christ teaches that the path to inner peace is not in the absence of suffering, but in accepting the divine will and in the deep understanding that suffering has a greater purpose. When we accept that every experience, even painful ones, is part of the divine plan of evolution, we find relief and comfort. The light burden that Jesus refers to is his doctrine of love, forgiveness, and service. This doctrine, in contrast to the heavy burdens of external rules and practices that people had imposed upon themselves, offers a freedom that is not a freedom without responsibility, but a freedom in the sense of living in harmony with divine principles, rather than to fight against them. He proposes that by following his example of humility and compassion, the burden of life becomes more bearable, as external difficulties are faced with an inner perspective of faith, love, and trust in God. The easy yoke is the commitment to the teachings of Christ, a commitment that frees us from existential anguish and leads us to spiritual comfort. Christ's promise is of a peace that is not the mere absence of conflict, but a peace that transcends external circumstances. When he says, "My peace I give to you, not as the world gives," he refers to a peace that is lasting and unchanging, a peace that comes from within, from the Spirit. This peace, for Christians, is the result of living according to the teachings of Christ and being in constant communion with the Spirit of God. The Comforter promised by Jesus, therefore, is a promise of spiritual assistance that guides us in moments of anguish and uncertainty, providing relief and clarity when we are in doubt or suffering. Christ's proposal is simple, but profound. He does not call for the adoption of heavy dogmas or complicated rituals, but rather the experience of unconditional love and charity. True consolation comes from understanding that we are all children of God and therefore interconnected with one another. The pain of one is the pain of all, and the relief of one is the relief of all. By helping and serving others, we find true joy and peace. True consolation does not come from material possessions or personal achievements, but from living in harmony with the principles of love, kindness, and compassion. In the Gospels, especially the book of John, Jesus promises that although he is physically departing, he would send the Comforter, the Spirit of Truth, to teach and guide humanity. Jesus assures his disciples that the Comforter would remind them of everything he had said and guide them to the full truth. John 14 verses 15 to 17 and 14:26. The Comforter would be a continuous spiritual presence, which would not only comfort afflicted hearts, but also enlighten minds about divine mysteries and universal laws. It is not limited to one person or one period of time, but manifests itself continually throughout history, guiding souls seeking truth and spiritual light. Spiritism, as divine revelation, is the fulfillment of this promise. He came to unravel the mysteries of life, death, and the afterlife, offering comfort to the afflicted and enlightenment to those who seek the truth. Spiritism is seen as the spirit of truth, which unmasks false doctrines, explains human suffering in a logical and rational way, and teaches us to respect divine laws more clearly. It helps to understand that suffering is not a punishment, but an opportunity for evolution and spiritual growth. Spiritism also teaches that each soul is responsible for its actions and that true peace can only be achieved through self-knowledge, charity, and the practice of truth. The Comforter has the role of guiding humanity in the search for understanding their own divine nature and their relationship with God. He helps us realize that, although life on earth is marked by challenges and difficulties, it is also a spiritual school, where each experience has a divine purpose. The Consoler teaches that, even in situations of pain and suffering, we can find consolation through understanding, resignation, and the practice of love. The Comforter comes to open the eyes of humanity to truths that were previously hidden, and it is through this revelation that peace and lasting happiness become possible. Spiritism offers a vision of suffering that may be difficult to accept initially, but which, when understood, brings great comfort. Suffering, according to Spiritist teachings, has a divine purpose. It is not the result of chance, nor is it a curse imposed by God, but rather a natural consequence of the choices we make, both in this life and in past lives. Suffering is seen as an opportunity for purification of the soul, learning, and spiritual progress. It should not be seen as a punishment, but as a chance for evolution. We understand that suffering has a reason for being. We acquire the ability to face it with resignation. Resignation does not mean passivity or acceptance without a fight, but rather the deep understanding that pain has a purpose and that it is part of a greater plan of spiritual evolution. By embracing resignation, the individual does not rebel against difficulties, but accepts them with humility and confidence that, in the end, everything will work together for the good. Resignation is, therefore, a spiritual virtue that opens the heart to divine consolation and allows human beings to transcend pain. The Spirit of Truth comes to alleviate not only physical suffering, but also moral suffering, which is often more intense and prolonged. Guilt, anxiety, and fear of the unknown are some of the causes of moral suffering. The Spirit of Truth comes to dispel these shadows, offering understanding, hope, and the certainty that everyone has the capacity to change and transform. He teaches that pain is temporary and that true happiness does not lie in momentary pleasure, but in achieving inner peace and harmony with divine law. True healing, according to the teachings of the Spirit of Truth, comes from internal transformation. The healing of souls does not depend on medicines or external treatments, but on the cultivation of love, charity, and forgiveness. The Spirit of Truth invites us to transform our hearts, to abandon grudges and negative feelings, and to make space for divine love. Love is the key to overcoming all difficulties, and the Spirit of Truth guides us to this understanding, offering us the consolation of knowing that, by loving, we are healing ourselves and the world around us. The Spirit of Truth also assures us that all efforts made towards spiritual evolution will be rewarded. Nothing that is done with love and dedication is lost, and all difficulties faced with patience and faith will be transformed into light. The reward for those who seek good, truth and peace is spiritual and eternal, a reward that transcends the temporal and material limitations of life on earth. The true reward is not in the accumulation of wealth or power, but in the purification of the soul and the achievement of divine harmony. This chapter addresses, in depth, the concept of the Comforter promised by Christ, expanded and clarified by Spiritism. It offers a clear path to overcoming suffering, to deeply understanding the divine purpose in human life, and to the search for true peace and spiritual solace. The Comforter, who is not an isolated figure, but a constant and accessible presence through the Spirit of Truth, guides us towards enlightenment and eternal salvation. If you were moved by the promise of comfort and the search for inner peace that Jesus offers us, subscribe to the channel and leave a like so that more people can find comfort and wisdom. Don't miss our updates on how to live in harmony with Christ's teachings and achieve spiritual evolution.